समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या? समझ में नहीं आया।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme related documents carefully.
In the unending cycle of violence, contested statehood, religious fault lines, and great power realignment in the Middle East, a new element has been added. Donald Trump's self styled big and beautiful 20-point peace plan for Gaza. Now, let me say two things up front. First, the plan is designed to fail upon implementation, if at all it's implemented. And second, that it undermines Trump's Abraham Accords, his signature achievement in his first term. The key takeaway is clear. The situation in the Middle East is unlikely to change anytime soon and may get a lot worse before it gets remotely better. And for those of you who are unwilling to hear me out till the end, the essence of the plan is simple. You know what it does? It seeks to harmonize Arab consent for Israel's open-ended control over Gaza. And in that narrow objective, at least, it is likely to succeed. So, what is the solution without a vision? That, in my opinion, is more of a damage control by Trump. You know, when Donald Trump unveiled the plan alongside Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, or Bibi, he claimed endorsements from Arab and Muslim leaders, stressing their support for Gaza's demilitarization and Hamas dismantling. Now, this followed meetings with Arab leaders on the sidelines of the United Nations General Assembly. Netanyahu quickly embraced it, even going as far as apologizing to Qatar for Israeli airspace violations, an unusually conciliatory move meant to smooth tensions. Now, that apology wasn't merely symbolic. Israeli violation of Qatar's sovereignty had badly damaged the normalization framework that Trump hoped to cement through the 2020 Abraham Accords. The fallout triggered a Saudi-Pakistan defense pact, extending Pakistan's nuclear umbrella to Riyadh, the Gulf's most influential state. Now, even if largely symbolic, it underscored how diminished US credibility had become in the region. The UAE, too, voiced frustration with Israel's actions against Qatar, even hinting at withdrawing from the Abraham Accords if Israeli aggression continued unchecked. The Emiratis reiterated their bottom line. They would not accept anything short of Palestinian statehood, something that Benjamin Netanyahu flatly rejects. And before I come to the 20-point peace plan, let me explain that the 2020 Abraham Accords that I'm mentioning again and again were meant to manage a delicate balance of contesting capabilities across the Arab world. Political sensitivities, economic dividends, and security considerations, and all of that under the assumption that Israel would remain within certain red lines. Now, that balance went off after the October 7, 2023 Hamas attacks, and all through the events in the last 2 years, it worsened almost irredeemably with the violation of Qatari sovereignty. Now, Trump is pragmatic and yet extremely simplistic. He has tried damage control. How? By orchestrating Netanyahu's apology to Qatar and offering a brand new security pact to Doha, all to reassure the Gulf capitals that such violations by Israel would not recur. Now, this is aimed at salvaging his signature regional achievement, the Abraham Accords, that he hopes to return to in his second term as well. But the irony is, his unwavering and unprecedented support for Israel ultimately undercuts his stated objective. And it is a contradiction that seems rooted in his limited grasp of regional geopolitics of any region, whether it's Middle East or South Asia or Europe. So why is Trump becoming so much the BB's man in his second term? For now, and through these deals, Washington has sought to ensure that Arab tacit support for Israel's dirty work to weaken Iran and its proxies continues, provided it does not openly compromise their sovereignty. Now, traditional US allies have chimed in with approval. The UK under Keir Starmer and even former Prime Minister Tony Blair has been floated as a key figure in the plan's transitional authority, and I'll explain to you in a bit. Yet there are several contradictions. The UK and France, both permanent members of the UNSC, recognize Palestinian statehood, but Israel, the main player, does not. Europeans publicly endorse Palestinian rights while aligning with Israel's security agenda. Now, in such a contradictory environment, how can a take it or leave it deal even function? Superficially speaking, the plan has drawn support from Saudi Arabia, from Qatar, UAE, Egypt, and Turkey, though many officials have later raised their doubts. Now, even India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi has endorsed it. He posting his approval in multiple languages and retweeting Trump's posts. But India has frankly little skin in the game there, and we will continue multi-aligning with all the actors. Support for such tweets is meant to redeem ties with Trump and assert India's traditional position on wars in general, and nothing really more than that. That said, India's role in Gaza's reconstruction or in initiatives like I2U2 or the IMEC connectivity corridor is unlikely to move forward because of the inherent instability in the region that continues. And now let's take a look at the 20-point peace plan and how it's full of contradictions and non-starters. Despite being packaged into 20 points, the plan frankly revolves around some Israeli aligned pillars. The immediate return of Israeli captives within 72 hours, the dismantling of Hamas, both politically and militarily, temporary international administration of Gaza, excluding Hamas but stopping short of Israeli annexation, governance by a technocratic Palestinian committee under a board of peace, which is going to be chaired by Trump himself, with global figures like Tony Blair. A roadmap for Palestinian Authority reform, which is going to be modeled on Trump's 2020 plan and other frameworks. Prisoner exchanges and a ceasefire contingent upon compliance. On paper, this looks rather balanced. Palestinian governance, international oversight, reconstruction pledges, but in reality, it is a non-negotiable diktat and a negotiated settlement. Hamas has already started demanding fundamental concessions. The core stumbling block here is point number 17, which allows Israel, with US backing, to continue military operations in Gaza unless Hamas disarms fully. In effect, the peace plan is actually an ultimatum: surrender or be destroyed. Now, for Hamas, the choice is between bad and worse. Accepting means slower motion suicide, and rejecting means immediate annihilation. So, Hamas is going to try to buy time. How? By saying yes to a few conditions and demanding concessions and other conditions. And this is what exactly they're doing right now. But then why do I then say that the plan is rather doomed? The point is, even if Hamas were to sign on it under duress or lack of a choice, failure is inevitable for deeper reasons. And in my opinion, there are 6 such reasons. First, Hamas's survival. Total disarmament contradicts Hamas's very identity and legitimacy. Why would it agree to its own political suicide? Second, Iran's interests. Hamas is integral to Tehran's axis of resistance. Now, for Iran, its complete disarmament would mark a strategic defeat, further undermining its regional leverage. Third, Netanyahu's domestic calculus. Bibi's coalition depends on prolonging the war. Any meaningful concessions threaten his government and career. Even after embracing Trump's plan, he reiterated his opposition to a Palestinian state. In fact, the day the war ends, many say that he's going to be behind bars. Fourth, Palestinians remain excluded. The plan sidelines Palestinian voices, both Hamas and the PA. Imposed externally, it has little chance of legitimacy on the ground, even if it were to be signed. Fifth, regional reluctance and contradictions. Countries like Egypt refuse to commit troops to an international stabilization force or the ISF without Palestinian involvement. Qatar continues lobbying on Hamas's behalf, and Turkey has also pitched into those efforts, making sure it doesn't allow Israel to succeed unilaterally. And finally, the sixth point is that there is ambiguity on financing all the reconstruction. There is no clarity on who is going to foot the bill for Gaza's rebuilding. Trump has refused, Netanyahu won't do it, and the Gulf donors, who are rich, remain non-committal. So what it shows at best is calculated involvement and constrained outcomes. Despite its flaws, the plan still provides Arab capitals with valuable diplomatic cover, and that is why they have showed their support for it. For Qatar, Netanyahu's apology over Israeli airspace violations has kind of restored its position as a trusted mediator and host. Saudi Arabia, meanwhile, signaled its displeasure with Israel and US by striking a defense pact with Pakistan, and yet ultimately welcomed this 20-point plan as a way to reinforce its claim to leadership in the Muslim world. Turkey has its own calculations. It has supported the initiative largely to counter Iran's proxies, while simultaneously pressing for concessions to Hamas in order to safeguard its own regional interests and balancing. Egypt and the UAE, for their part, endorsed the proposal to remain aligned with Washington, though both have quietly voiced reservations about its shortcoming. And for Arab states, then, endorsing Trump's plan is more optics. Why? Because it allows for participation without risk, signaling goodwill without substantive commitment. Now, Europe's role is even more symbolic. With Tony Blair positioned as a figurehead, Europeans can claim involvement without enforcement. Some states have recognized Palestine to balance domestic outrage with their pro-Israel stances, and I already told you about UK and France. Now, even China and Russia have welcomed the plan. And this is coming less out of any support or love for Donald Trump, but more to secure their own regional stakes. China's influence in the region is rising. Russia's influence in the region is waning. Both see advantage in staying engaged. For Bibi himself, the plan is tactical, not really transformative. It secures unconditional US backing for continued operations while buying time. It allows Israel to press on against Hamas and potentially against Iran-backed groups in Iraq and Syria without making real concessions. Ultimately, the plan's contradictions ensure it will fail. It is not a vision for peace, but a mechanism to prolong the status quo under Israel's military superiority. For Bibi, that serves as domestic survival. For Trump, it revives his diplomatic profile. For Gaza, it offers little beyond more uncertainty and suffering. And as for India, its role remains peripheral, caught between multi-alignment, stalled projects like IMEC, and rising Pakistani visibility and diplomatic profile in Gulf security. Now, for New Delhi, the priority for now is simply damage control and continue multi-alignment, even if it is becoming more and more an unequal distribution. I'll be back to discuss this conflict and other wars. Stay tuned.